Good evening, everyone. We are calling the January 14th meeting of the Ontario School Board to order. We have a tobacco policy in place. There's no smoking within 100 feet of school buildings. Please rise for the pledge. District Clerk, will you please call roll?
Trustee Knudsen?
Here.
Trustee Jerome? Trustee Mitchell-Morrell? Trustee Goodrich?
Here.
Trustee Hemingway Lynch?
Here.
Trustee Raimondo?
Here.
Trustee Bishop?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start off with our welcome from Bennett School Principal Gabriel Bono.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bennett. Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a phenomenal holiday. I'm going to start off. I have a script for you this evening, so don't fall asleep on me. I want to just acknowledge our incredible PTA and under the leadership of Christy Signor and Janice Thierry, they actually have put together some refreshments and snacks for all of you as just a token of their appreciation for all of your volunteerism. And you'll find it when you go to executive session in room 11. So on behalf of them, thank you very much. They've been killing it out there. They have a phenomenal fall festival. It was once again a huge smash. The Holiday Boutique, which gives the children the opportunity to actually go shopping for their families for the holidays, and it just helps give children ownership and participate in that gift of giving. They also hosted a holiday craft fair, which was so much fun, and they couldn't have done it without the support of all the parents chipping in and running certain crafts. It was a great community event. They've also collected household items and canned goods for the victims of South Carolina. Their benevolence doesn't stop, and I'm very grateful for all that they do. I'm also grateful for Ruth Merende, who is the director of the community events for the Ashokan Center. She actually donated one of her performers for one of the concerts they were hosting this past fall. She actually has the Winter Hoop coming up at the end of the month, and she's sharing a performer, Rachel Davis, with us. We're going to be having another music assembly at the end of the month here. Rachel Davis's children music show is a delightful whirlwind of developmentally engaging songs and interactive musical games that encourages movement, singing, participation for all of our students. So we're just so fortunate. I'm so fortunate on behalf of Bennett that we have the support of the Ashokan Center. We just keep on reaping the benefits of their generosity. Let's see here. Just to remind all of you that you set up goals for this year, in case you forgot. And I wanted to just share with you how Bennett is supporting some of those goals. Under the Culture and Climate, we have the Bennett Elementary Sunshine Committee. And we started up the school year by having a luncheon for our staff, and then I hosted a trivia contest. I did stump them. I asked so many hard questions, and it's ironic I stumped them on just one. And I'm going to ask all of you, you're now getting a test. What do you call the dot that's over the I and J? Yes, sir? A tittle is correct. Congratulations. All right, the fact that you're all laughing right now and clapping, that adds to the culture and climate of Bennett. We have fun Fridays. We dress up thematically. Anybody can. It's not mandatory, but we have, there's a Jersey Day. There's, help me out, Hawaiian Day. Hawaiian Day. What's coming up this Friday? I should know this. It's on the website. Let's see, what else is the Sunshine Committee responsible for? We have monthly breakfasts as a staff. There is a Woot Woot Cart. A Woot Woot Cart is actually hosted by Miss Morris's kindergarten through third grade class, and I come around and I help them. We go around and just pass out little treats for the adults because it can't be all fun and activities just for the kids, because the adults here are really big kids. Me being one of the shortest, biggest kids in the building. There's been holiday gatherings. We celebrate birthdays for kids. There's a bunch of other activities that the Sunshine Committee puts on and sponsors to add joy to the building. We're doing our best to keep it positive, and we are working in between all of that fun as well. And with that, I'm going to let Ms. Kovac and Ms. Corsito talk to you about the academics.
All right. Well, good evening, Board. As the Bennett Math Liaison, I would like to take some time just to talk about the math academics that have been going on this year at Bennett. So as math educators in our third year of teaching using our new illustrative math curriculum, we've had the opportunity to gain even more insight and experience with the curriculum on our last Superintendent's Conference Day in December. We had the opportunity to gain a new perception on how to appropriately implement the 5 practices for orchestrating productive discussions during math lessons. To increase our academics, make our academics more successful and progressive for our students through discussion, not just the teacher talking to the students, but the students talking with the teacher and the students talking amongst themselves. So the 5 practices that we've been implementing within our classrooms are anticipate, monitor, select, sequence, and connect. So the first step being the anticipation step. During that step, the teacher, before teaching even begins, the teacher considers how students might interpret a problem mathematically. They think about strategies that the students might come up with, both correct strategies and incorrect strategies, and sort of plan ahead for what they might be seeing and hearing in the classroom. Next step being the monitor step. During that step, the teacher pays close attention to the students' mathematical thinking and the solution strategies as they work on the appropriate task during that lesson. The next step being the select task, the teacher selects students to share their work with the rest of the class to get specific mathematics into the open for discussion. And the selection of students during this step is guided by the anticipated strategies from the first step. They don't have to be the correct strategies. They can be strategies that the kids are coming up with on their own. And that kind of opens the door for that great discussion. What is student A thinking? How are they thinking outside of the box? How did they get their answer? Can we kind of pull it apart, right? How can we take their idea and bring it up to where we want? For example, I teach 4th grade. How can we bring it up to that 4th grade strategy that we're looking for? 4th step being the sequence step. The teacher makes purposeful choices about the order in which the student's work is shared to maximize mathematical goals. So something in my classroom that I like to do with this step is I take more of the concrete strategies, more of like the model drawings. I start with those, and then we kind of build up to those middle strategies. And then I like to end with the more advanced strategies, the strategies I'm kind of looking for already, where the students should be at the end of the lesson, so the students can see where they should be progressing. And then the last step is the connect step, where the teacher helps students draw connections between their solutions and the other students' solutions, as well as drawing into the key mathematical ideas, the objective, the goal of the lesson. And I know all of our math educators are doing their best to incorporate these 5 practices. And they're doing so within their math units that they're teaching right now. I had a chance to touch base with all grade levels. We talked about the units that they're working on, and one common theme that I noticed within each grade level is all the different strategies that they're seeing. They're already noticing these really advanced strategies, these ways of thinking about math, and how they're leading to these great math discussions within the classroom. And it's not just the advanced kids in the class that can lead these discussions. It's the kids in the class that are still, leaning on those model drawings, the concrete, the hands-on, the manipulatives, but they're able to add their ideas to these discussions on the advanced strategies, and that's what it's all about. And we're really liking what we're seeing by incorporating these 5 strategies, and we just see the growth in our students, and we couldn't be happier. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Amanda Shufflin-Kovac, and I'm the literacy liaison. So here at Bennett, and I'm here to answer, I guess, the question of how do we help student achievement in literacy? And so right now, quarter 2 ends in a couple weeks. So everybody in literacy right now, we're collecting data, we're analyzing it to make decisions to see how will our small group instruction change. We're looking at the NWEA right now, we're doing running records, the phonics decoding assessment, spelling inventory, writing samples. I mean, the list can go on. But what's really important is that when quarter 3 begins on January 27th, we're really going to be using that data to instruct. And so I have to give a shout out to our MTSS, Liz Fallow. We're doing grade level meetings here, and the conversations have been really powerful because it's feeling like a team. It's a team approach with teachers, administrators, and it's really exciting that we're moving forward. The AIS department has been training with Ames Web for progress monitoring recently too, and so we're moving forward in that. I love that Aniora is really practicing best practice and latest research, and I think what supports that is, we have Advancing Literacy, Christine Holly, who's fantastic, coming in and demonstrating live lessons with our students with teachers present, and then we're getting to do it ourselves. Another thing, we're in these literacy courses that Columbia is providing for us. And it's with a lot of shifts with the science of reading. So one of the classes is called Use Decodable Texts in Small Groups to Help Students Draw on Phonemic Awareness and Phonics to Support Comprehension. And I know that's a lot of words, but when you think of New York State just dropped the big 6 pillars and it's talking about all of this, it's like we're in these latest courses learning and applying it right away with our students. Another, Mr. Bono does after school workshops for faculty meetings, and our staff is confident enough to turnkey these trainings to other staff. So a kindergarten teacher and a first grade teacher went to that decodable class, and everybody K-5 who was literacy was there and taking on oh, how can we do these decodable books right away? That's powerful and it's exciting. There's grade 3 through 6 phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency for upper grades that were in a course too. And so having that along with another course called feedback, data analytics, there we go, and fostering cultures of agency, and just bringing, it's just all of this, what's happening now, we're already in it. It's exciting. But and another thing, I know that even though on January 7th that New York State just dropped how we're gonna have the literacy instructional best practices, and it's not going to start until September, but I know that our staff will be talking about it probably our next faculty meeting. And so I think it just shows how engaged and how knowledgeable our staff wants to be because what is this about? Students. It's always about students and what they deserve the best. And I really strongly believe that we're all here in it for them and we are doing best practice. So I'm going to end. Last time I spoke to you, I talked about how we believe in meeting all students in their zone of proximal development. And I have a story that I shared with the PTA at our last meeting, and it was about a third grader who explicitly was taught a phonics skill that she was struggling in. And it was the sound, if you think about K, the sound of K, there's words that end in digraph CK, there's words that end in K, and then there's words that end like multi-syllable words that are like panic, fantastic, I see. And learning the best practices, I explicitly taught this skill. And then she had a time to practice in games and multisensory magnet tiles. And then she was using it in decodable text. In her group, they were doing this too because this was using data. Realized this was an area of weakness. But what was so powerful about this third grader, and in my head too, I'm a researcher that likes to try it out. Like, is this real? Does this work? Like, let's see. She not only was able to master the skill on her own independently in the classroom, she taught the teacher and her peers. Better than probably I did. And isn't that our goal too? Like students owning their learning. So I just think that's those moments that we're really all about. And working with the PTA this year too and attending their meetings. I know you're here behind us too. It's amazing. We're hoping to end in March. We're working with the PTA and the AIS department and our school librarian. We're going to partner and do a math literacy night. And I think that will be another great thing. So more information to come because we're in the planning processes, but really trying to, do all of that. So here at Bennett, we're continuing to soar.
We start off we end each morning announcement with Eagles Let's Soar. It's a little phonemic. No, maybe not. No? All right. We'll move on to one last goal that we're trying to help you achieve, which is chronic absenteeism. I will tell you, after being the principal here for almost 2 decades, thank you. Thank you for this goal, because this goal has chronically been a concern of mine for years. I'm happy to say that the district has charged Rosalie Mernon, who is a district social worker, and she's partnered with us, being me, our school psychologist, our school social worker, our school counselor, our school nurse, and our attendance officer to address chronic absenteeism. It's very real. When students aren't here, they're not learning. It's just that simple. And it's been a problem that's plagued at least Bennett and the whole entire district for a very long time. Currently, we have 42 students out of 239 students that are chronically absent. It's about 18% right now. We are meeting with Rosalie on a monthly basis, and we're implementing different strategies depending upon each family and their needs. At a quick glance, I don't have numbers for you, I'm sorry, but compared to the past couple of years where we are right now, there's improvement. So I can tell you that there's improvement. I can't give you a percentage on that, but we're talking, we're meeting, we're strategizing, and we're partnering to the best of our ability. And I have to say that a lot of parents have been more receptive than talking to the mean old principal. And Rosalie just does it with a little bit more tact, and she's not as authoritative as the school principal. With that concludes my welcome. Does anybody have any questions for me? Have a great meeting.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Good job, all of you. Excellent. Very enthusiastic. All right, we will move on to item 3.01. We will motion to enter into executive session to discuss the ANTIA negotiations and to meet with our attorney. May I have a first? Trustee Raimondo, second. Trustee Lynch, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. We'll be back in about 45 minutes. All right, we are back from executive session. Before we have a motion to exit executive session, I just want to thank the Bennett PTA for the delicious snacks. That was very lovely of you. May I have a motion to exit executive session and return to public session? Trustee Knutson, second. Trustee Goodrich, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next on our agenda is Assistant Superintendent for Business, Monica LeClaire, will present the budget development and enrollment projections.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the start of the 25-26 budget as we are entering 2025. As I have done in previous years, I kind of like to start the budget process with kind of how do we develop a budget, and then we like to take a look at the newest enrollment projections that come out around this time as well. So developing a budget is a year-round process. It is not a, oh, we're in January, now it's time to start. We are always looking at our budget in the business office. It is truly a year-round process. So as you can see, it literally starts in September, because in September, we are looking at the budget that was approved in May, saying, okay, did we do a good job of guessing what's going to happen in September from back in May? When you think about it, it was back in March, because March is when you approve the budget that goes to the voters in May. So in March, we're already trying to figure out where we are in September. So when September finally rolls around, we're like, how good we do? You know, we look at the programs, and then I start working on rollover in October already, reviewing the history, reviewing trends, and mandates. Mandates come out continually. December, we start reviewing the enrollment, assessing some non-instructional needs, and having initial discussions with the administrators. Then in January is when we really kind of start digging into the numbers, talking about staffing, going through first draft. The governor's budget should be released the end of January. I know she did her State of the State address today. I did not listen to it. I actually forgot it was today. So I will maybe get the highlights at some point. And then we start reviewing the BOCES budget as well. As we enter into February, we're finalizing the BOCES budget, the revenue budget. The tax cap calculation is due to the state by March 1st. And then we do some additional presentations to the board at our February 4th and 18th meeting. March, we will get our final health insurance rates, look at our fund balance, finalize our revenue, present the final draft, and in addition to have resolutions for those capital project propositions, in addition to any other propositions other than the budget, have to be approved by the board in March. So in April, that's when the IEPs kind of get completed for our potential out-of-district students. So any transportation for out-of-district students for private schools are due April 1st. We fine-tune the budget, and then we look to the board to adopt the budget around April 12th with the property tax report card. I'm assuming is actually the day after the board adopts the budget, so must have forgotten to change that date. Apologize for that. So as you can tell, when we say year-round, we mean year-round. These are really kind of some of the other items as far as the staffing, the impact of any instructional program changes that Assistant Superintendent Laffin or Assistant Superintendent Allison are looking for their departments. And then looking at facilities needs and what we could potentially cover in the budget versus what we would look to do in a potential capital project. And then looking at other long-range initiatives, what we need for technology, textbooks, equipment, maintenance, that sort of thing. So number one, salaries. That is our number one budget driver. Supplies and contractual expenses, look at that by buildings. I mentioned BOCES, I mentioned special ed, transportation, retirement costs. We have the employee retirement system and the teacher retirement system. Our health insurance, as well as our liability insurance and our workers' comp insurance. So what are our goals? Our ultimate goal is to get the highest quality of teaching and learning for all of our students. That is the number one goal when we build a budget. Our number two is also trying to maintain financial stability. We try to refine the budget as much as possible to really reflect what it is we are trying to accomplish, what it is we are trying to give our students. We try to maximize efficiencies where possible while minimizing the tax levy increase. We want to maintain our reserve funds because that helps us with cash flow. When we have cash flow, we're not worried about borrowing, so we don't have interest costs, but we have interest revenue. Interest is still actually relatively high, which has worked in our favor. And we also continue to look at long-term planning, which is very important for budgeting. So as far as the current budget facts that we know as we're going into 25-26, we have one contract that's expiring on TIA. All the rest of them are in place. So those costs are already in the budget. We still have some inflation issues that we're dealing with. The rates for retirement costs, ERS and TRS, are looking to be relatively stable for this upcoming year. We can thank the market for that. We are still looking at the teacher shortage. This is the same information that I presented last year. There is still a decline in enrollment in teacher programs. There are fewer benefits in Tier 6, though they are looking to adjust that. They did adjust it a little bit, and I think they are continuing to look at potentially adjusting Tier 6 benefits. But as I also mentioned, we have plenty of our active employees that are eligible to retire within the next 5 years. There is still some uncertainty in health insurance. Projections are expected in March. They have been higher than normal the last few months. So there's a little uncertainty whether they're going to try to use fund balance to keep that increase a little lower than it should. So it's for health insurance a little early. But I did want to mention that we currently cover 240 active employees and 320 retirees. The active employees, however, do account for about 55.5% of our health insurance rates, while the retirees are about 44.5%. And that's generally because our active employees are families, whereas our retirees are generally individuals. We have a few families that are still in the retirees, but we have a lot more that are individuals. We still have uncertainty with state aid. As I mentioned, governor's budget should be released soon. And in addition to that, sad to say, no more federal grants for CRISA or ARP. So where are we with our fund balance? We have a very healthy fund balance.
Excuse me one second.
I'm sorry.
Could you just do me a favor? Just explain what CRISA and ARP stand for community.
I'll be honest, I may not remember CRISA. ARP was American Rescue Plan. CRISA was COVID relief. They were both COVID era grants that every school district, I think in the country, received. We received a little over $1 million for the CRISA and over $6 million for ARP. So just as a side note, yes, it was a lot of money. We, however, did not use that money to pay for salaries, which will help us as we lose the money. We're not losing, anything. We used it for the high school generator. We used it for projects in the high school for classrooms. We used it for the Bennett HVAC project, for things like that. We use it for professional development for the teachers, and so again, we tried very hard not to use it for things that were recurring costs that would then affect our future budgets. So going into our fund balance, we have very healthy reserves. We have over $6.5 million in our capital reserve, $750,000 unemployment, 4.5 in ERS reserve, only $29,000 repair reserve. Way to go to spend down that reserve. For that reserve, we used the money for the tennis court. We used the money for the roof in the high school, and then also for the roof at West Hurley. So very good uses for that money. We have $2 million in the teacher retirement reserve, and then our employee Bennett reserve, a little over $1.5 million, and that's the money that we hold for staff that maybe 12-month staff that have vacation accrued. If they leave, the money for their vacation comes out of that. So going on to our enrollment study, I know you all know that we are comprised of 6 towns and 2 counties. We are a large district. We are a large district geographically. The methodology that is used to do this enrollment study is one that's been done, this is the one that's been done historically in this district as well as other districts, and it uses a model where it moves the cohort from year to year. It looks at historical survival methodology, what percentage of a 2nd grade has moved to 3rd grade, what percentage of a 3rd grade moved to 4th grade, knowing that it's very rarely every student. We in this district have very volatile survival rates, which makes it difficult to project enrollment. So again, it's basically a magic 8 ball in certain areas. And so you can kind of see here where it's green means it's over 100%, where it's red means it's under 100%. So you can see there's very little rhyme or reason. You can see in 2021, more that year going into the next year, a lot of the grades were higher than 100, and that I would say would be attributed to COVID. So these are kids moving into the district, and basically the reds are kids moving out. So if you look at then historically, and then you look at, okay, how do we project moving forward? It's you take an average. The one year that I think that we can safely say we are almost always over 100 is 8th and 9th grade. We tend to get a lot of kids in from private schools by the 8th and 9th grade. So then looking at our district-wide enrollment historically from 2015 all the way through 2023, no surprise, every year has been a slight decrease. So 23, 24, 24, 25, we're currently at 1,041. Projecting forward, we're still projecting a decrease. However, it is starting to slow. And I think the biggest, if you look at it, we've had the biggest change historically in the earlier grades, and now they're kind of pushing into the upper grades. So we're now starting to see our high school classes go down, but our elementary classes are stabilizing. Once our high school classes start stabilizing, we should see a relative stabilizing of between, 60-ish to 80-ish, with obviously your random pop up and pop down, which happens all the time. I think every few years we get that random class that's really big, or we get that random class that's really small. Okay, yeah, this chart basically just shows the way the numbers flow. And then just kind of the same thing, breaking it down K-5. As you can see, we start leveling out. 6-8 has been kind of historically bumpy, but I think we're starting to level out there as well. And I forgot to put the chart. We kept saying, oh, don't forget to put that in. Don't forget to put that in. Guess what? I forgot to put that in. I will put it in before you put it and resend it. But you can see from the numbers that really high school is going to see the largest decrease over the next few years. And really this slide, I like to pick out a couple of when I'm looking at enrollments and what happened in prior years and current years. So I was very happy to see that in 24-25 we projected the cohort to be 72, and we got 71. So I'm like, oh, spot on. But last year we projected to have 413 kids in the high school. We have 368. We had 109 ninth graders in 23-24. We have 86 10th graders. So just as a side note, when I see something like that, I'm like, what the heck happened? So Sharon Wood very graciously and with a lot of time and effort went through all of the students, and it was actually very interesting. While there were quite a few that left, some that came in, there were also some that skipped right from 9th grade and went to 11th grade. And then there were some that were in 9th grade that stayed in 9th grade and never went to 10th grade because of credits. So they weren't considered, so they might be a 9th grader for 2 years, but they get enough credits to be an 11th grader. And so we realized in high school, enrollment is very difficult to predict because it's not about the grade, it's about the credits. So that was actually something that I thought was very interesting. So total projection for this year was supposed to be 1,051. We have 1,041, so we're about 10 low. So as we move forward, as we start looking at building a district and building to capacity, we want to make sure we have enough of everything for every student we're going to have, but we don't want to build so big that now we're spending money on things that we no longer can support because we don't have the students. So we just said, okay, assuming a minimum of 60 per grade, a maximum of 80 per grade, our enrollment should relatively settle between 780 and 1,040. So we're going to build to that. More likely to the high end because I'm a very cautious person when it comes to budgeting. But really just to kind of show you that we like to do enrollment projections. We will continue to do enrollment projections, but it is not an exact science, and it never will be in this district because we have so much more movement in this district than a lot of other school districts have. It's just the way it is. So, any questions?
I have one question, just while I'm thinking about it. You mentioned on page 8 that Tier 6 for new teachers has fewer benefits, and you said that they were making some adjustments. Can you just talk a little bit about who makes those adjustments and what kind of adjustments we could be looking for?
So they adjust the who. I'm assuming it's SED. I'm not. I'll have to double check. I'm not 100% sure the who. It's part of the governor's budget. So I'm assuming it's somehow the state. One of the changes they did make was the vesting, and then there was also something else that I can't remember. I can find out and let you guys know.
Thank you. Great. Trustee Jerome?
Yeah, I was just curious. You mentioned like a lot of movement or volatility in terms of students leaving, right, or coming in, and how are we different than other districts? Like, I'm just curious about what that means and why.
Well, for our district, I think it's because we have such high property wealth. We don't have the work for, I can't say the work for, like the places for people to work in our neighborhood. So if you think of a lot of other towns, people live in the town, they work in the town, they stay in the town. Whereas if you live in Ontiora, if you don't work in the school, then you really don't work in it. You can't work in the district. There are very few jobs in the district. But we have always been a large percentage of second homeowners, even in the 80s and 90s. We had a huge population of second homeowners, whereas most other school districts didn't have that. So they don't have those people coming and going. And then the prices are a huge part of it too.
Any other questions? Trustee Knutson?
Yeah, I'm just curious about, can you talk a little bit about, do you know, or if you can describe sort of what are the external demographic data that go into these numbers that in these charts?
So
I understand survival rates, but
right.
But if we're projecting out how many kindergartners are going to show up in 4
So
years.
the initial, it's obviously it starts with our birth rates, which we get from Department of Health, I believe. And then from that is, okay, historically, we may have 80 kids born in our district, and then in 5 years, when they're eligible for kindergarten, what's the percentage of those kids that are born in our district actually go to kindergarten in our district? And so they average, so they look at historically all the percentages and say, okay, looking at that, I'm going to predict 96% will go into, is it, I mean, it's not science. I will tell you that I thought it was interesting when I averaged all those, it averaged to like 99.9%. So that was interesting.
Trustee Lynch? No? Oh, same question. Anyone else? Any other questions? Thank you so much. We'll see you at the next meeting.
You're very welcome.
And on to item 4.02. Our MTSS coordinator, Liz Fallow, will present on multi-tiered systems of support and branching minds.
Good evening. So welcome to my MTSS presentation. Thank you for having me tonight, and of course, Happy New Year and welcome back after our break. So the multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS, usually that's the first question. MTSS, what is that? And it's exactly what it says, and really looking at those tiers. So these are the things I'm going to talk about tonight. And again, really looking at that umbrella is what MTSS is. It's looking at our students not only academically, behaviorally, and social emotionally, putting those all together. So really tonight we'll look at where we've come over time, what our MTSS system is. When we talk about tiers, what does that mean? Interventions and supports, our progress monitoring, and really what our journey has been here at Onteora, because it hasn't just happened overnight, that's for sure. We're using the Branching Minds platform as one of, it's a significant tool for us in this process, and I'm excited to share that with you, and of course, questions for this evening. So the first question really is how did we get here? MTSS, it's another acronym, another set of initials that we listen to, but over time it really has grown. It was best described to me once as we think about, for those of us that remember, and I think many of us will, the old VCR. It was the best technology we had. And then the VCR kind of grew into the CD player. That was the next step. And now we digitally download. We have access to everything at the click of a button. So really looking at it from that progressive standpoint. Back in the 1970s, we had what was called the discrepancy model. We knew at that point in time we had to help our students. But we did that by looking at their IQ in one hand, whatever that score was, and then looked at their achievement. And if they matched, the kid was okay. But if they didn't match, we need to give them extra help. It was a start. Over time, we came to the reauthorization of IDEA, PBIS, the positive behavior intervention. That was one piece of that. Okay, not just talking about academics, now we're talking about behavior. Coming in, we reauthorized IDEA again, and we came up with RTI, so response to intervention. So at that point in time, we were starting to look at the tiers of where our kids fell. How did we know if they needed extra help? But at that point in time, we were really just focused on academics. We'd look at their scores. We'd know that our students at the certain percentile needed academic supports. So we gave them AIS. We gave them extra help. It wasn't until 2020, and just before that when ESSA came out, I think it was 2015, 2018, where they started talking about integrating all of these different things. It was the first time in any of the legislation, regulation, where they were talking about integrating services. So not just academics, behavior, and social emotional. And really that's what's brought us to today, looking at MTSS, looking at that multi-tiered system of supports. It's not just one support. Here's a quick definition. It's that support that wraps around the entire student body. And this is the addition as well, using data to drive those decisions. Collaborative problem solving, you heard one of our teachers talk about it today, as we sit at our meetings, and I'll talk more about them, and really put our heads together, looking at the data together and problem solve, what do we need to do for our kids? We look at our levels. We talk a lot about tiers. We look at our students, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and we're looking at all of their data. Are there behavior pieces? What is their attendance? What are their social emotional needs? And of course, what are their academics? The majority of our students, or about 80% of our students, should fall into that tier 1 group, which is really where the teacher in the classroom can provide those supports, whole class, maybe a little additional small group instruction over the course of the day. Tier 2 and tier 3 kids are our kids who need really some additional supports. That really should be only that 20%, that other 20% broken down into tier 3, the highest, about 5%, and the other piece in between. And that's where our AIS teachers, our specialists, come in. Well, you know, you've maybe heard some of us talk about that's where you want to go to a specialist. You want to go to that specialist if you have to have surgery. That's where our specialists come in. Just adding how SEL and behavior pieces fall under MTSS as well. We've done a lot of work in the district. We know with Morningside and other pieces working on social emotional learning. Really teaching those social emotional skills to help our kids navigate different situations they come across in everyday life. On top of that, we talk about behaviors. How do we, in a positive way, support our students behaviorally? By teaching and reinforcing those appropriate behaviors to prevent disruption to learning. And we really need those two things put together to have students that really are ready to learn, that they're able to sit in our classroom, self-regulate, and be engaged in what's going on around them. So we keep talking about interventions in this process. And this is one piece, like, what is an intervention? For us, when we have our conversations, they're very targeted because we're looking at the child individually, specifically around their data and what we see, and we target it based on what they need. It could be programs, it could be specific activities, specific lessons based on what they need, not just a general lesson, and those tools and strategies. Coming back to what are they not? It's not global. It's not one size fits all in any way, shape, or form. We talk about putting kids in groups, but appropriate groups, putting kids based on appropriate needs. So we're working on the skills specifically that they need. It's not just homework help. It's not just test prep. It's not just reviewing what they did in class. That's tier 1. The teacher can do that. It's not a place. Oh, they're going to go to the library for extra help, or they're just going to stay after school. That's not an intervention as such. And it's not just a person. It's what that person does. Another set of words we use a lot, interventions, is what we do. It's supporting what that child's goal is. Progress monitor. That's really how our teachers and we sit down to look at, is what I'm doing working? It's that quick snapshot. It might be a check-in, it might be a quick review, whatever that is, we want to track what we're doing to make sure it's working. Because if it's not working, we need to find another road. Where have we started? This has been, we've tagged it, I think, one of the slowest rollouts, to be very purposeful, because this is not something that happens overnight. We all know that specific change to this degree takes years. It's kind of been drilled into us. This is a 3 to 5 year process. We're in month 5. but we did start the planning and the process back in August of 2023 when we had launched it with the administrators. We started those foundations with MTSS, working with Branching Minds. They were a strong support for us as we developed our handbook and developed the district's core teams, specifically at the elementary school. And we had our launch this September. December, we started working with middle school, their core middle school team, and we'll be looking further into that going further. What are our goals? Ultimately is looking at equitable and positive outcomes for all of our students, using that problem-solving method to look at those specific needs, using research-based interventions and curriculum. And most of all, using our data to do it and maintaining our commitment to staying this path, to stick with it. So with that, through this process, we've heard Branching Minds mentioned. Branching Minds is a computer platform that stores our data. And ultimately, that sounds pretty simple. Like, okay, so what? They store our data. But with that, it's really become one of our a significant tool for us, because we can, at a touch of a button, look back at a student and look to see how they've been doing. Where have their reading running records been? Where is their benchmark data? We don't have to dig through spreadsheets. We don't have to go through somebody's file from last year. We don't have to call last year's teacher who might be in a different building. We have it at the touch of our hands, and that is powerful. This is just an example of what our teachers could see when it comes up. Every one of their students is available to them, and there's a quick profile page that will trigger right off the bat. Are there attendance concerns? Yes or no? Is there a learning plan? Is there a Section 504 accommodation plan? Is there an IEP? Is the student an English language learner? Are there test modifications? So really a quick glance. I don't have to go digging in their records in the student management system to compare their attendance or to calculate that. If the student is at risk, I believe it's 20 or 10%? I forget the exact percentage where it flags them, but it does it for us. Another page, again, just kind of a different spot on the same page. You would scroll down, and we can pull up a student's benchmark data. This is a quick glimpse of what you could see. So right off the top, you could see a student's MAP data, which is what we use as a benchmark. When I say benchmark, we test our kids in the district, K through middle school, basically 3 times a year. That's part of our plan, in the fall, in the winter, and then the spring. And that's one of the ways that we track our students' progress. So right now, we're currently, our kids are finishing up their winter benchmarks. But I could turn around and look at student A right off the bat, and right here, I can see their last 5 benchmarks right off the bat. I know where their levels currently are. I know what their percentile is. And are there any patterns? Is there a trend? We can do that for math. We can see their state assessments. Again, it's right there available for us to see. Just an example for math. We have our STAR data, again, NWA MAPS data, going back, and to your right, we could actually go further off the page into previous years if we needed to. It will give us tier reports, basically looking at our students' data. We can look across buildings. We can look across grade levels. We can look at our different subgroups, whether it be boys, girls, ethnicity, socioeconomic. Are we serving all of our students? And are they performing the way we know we want them to be able to? And it gives us growth charts. This is probably one of the things I'm most excited about. I will be even more excited about it probably in February when I can compare all of our notes from the test this month. But really to see not just how our kids are doing. Are they jumping from tier 2? Are they getting into tier 1? But also, are they moving within their tier? This gives us that data really at the press of a button. So our teachers and administration can see specifically how our kids are doing and are they growing in the direction we want them to. Are they able to move up a tier? And if not, are they at least moving in the right direction towards that within their tier? So that'll be exciting data that we'll have at our fingertips. We currently started our data meetings this school year. More specifically, we have 3 types of meetings that we hold using Branching Minds as our base. And we have our grade level data meetings, which we've been having about every 6 weeks. We had one just before the holidays. We'll have one post our winter testing to go over really looking at where our kids falling. We will look at those charts that I gave you a quick glimpse of. And that's where we sit down and really talk about how are we going to group our kids, what services do they need, and how do we do it. And having those players at the table has been so vitally important, and it's made a significant difference. When kids have more difficulty or we feel like it requires more attention than what we can do at the grade level, we have the student-specific data meetings. And again, similar team, might be a little bit closer to, specifically around that student. And again, just really, what do we have to adjust? And then our school leadership data meetings, which we're just going to be starting over the course of this year, is really looking at our data as a district and per buildings. And moving forward, we've hit the ground running. We're looking at middle school training. Our winter benchmarks are happening. Ames Web, that is that progress monitoring piece you heard a little bit about. Really, it's just another tool that we're using for those snapshots. So how do we know what we're doing is helping on the short term? And then really continuing our meetings, our grade level, our individual student meetings, honoring our system that we've chosen to put in place. Any questions for me?
If I may, I'd like to just start by saying thank you so much to Ms. Fallow, who took on this role that nobody else has done in this district and has really run with it and made this such a valuable component of our district and put to use all of the skills that she's used here in our district all of the years that she's been with us. And I just want to very much appreciate and thank you for everything that you've done in this role, because we really needed it, and we needed a point person who could manage it and was familiar with all of our faculty, all of our students, and could jump in and do it. And you have done a phenomenal job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Lynch?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Fallow. 2 questions. One was just in terms of the timeline. While it just launched in September, I understand, does that mean that you have, as you say, at the touch of a button, the data going back multiple years? And secondly, when is the rollout plan for the high school?
First question, yes, we've taken our previous data and uploaded it into the system. So right now, we do see multi-year for some of our data points. There are some things we're just putting in now that, as we're learning, we've decided to add a few things, but for the most part, our solid information is in there now, which is great, and it goes back a number of years, so that's been super helpful. And really, we're starting our work at the middle school now. We actually had a meeting today talking about moving forward, so that's in the works.
Trustee Knudsen?
Yeah, thank you. It was very enlightening. My quick question was, those data points that you see in the individual students' profiles on progress, things like that, is it safe to assume that any of that data can be aggregated so that the student is not identifiable and it can be, viewed in aggregate? If the board was interested in seeing how math is progressing, math assessments are progressing, could we get that data aggregated as opposed to on an individual student level?
There are different ways we could look at data, absolutely, and then certainly take away the student personal information. We could certainly look at those different things, especially as we're growing in the process.
Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Allison.
Just wanted to say two things. One, just to also add to Trustee Lynch's question, MTSS is occurring in the high school. So I didn't want to, I just wanted to clarify that they do have an MTSS process and they do have MTSS meetings. I also wanted to point out that we were recently had a meeting county-wide with some of our Mid-Hudson region partners who pointed out how ahead of the game Onteora is in terms of having Miss Fallow in this position and taking the lead in putting Miss Fallow as an administrator and looking at MTSS. So I thought it was just a feather in our cap that not only is she doing a great job for us here, but she's really seen as someone in a leader in the field within our region.
Thank you.
Other questions? Trustee Goodrich?
So does that mean that some of the other schools in Ulster County are not using MTSS, or what does that mean?
I would. There.
So just to come to that, everyone is at kind of their own place and journey with MTSS. Different districts have different systems. They have different funding sources. They have different funds available, different structures. It's really complex. So MTSS, it's a journey that even us, we've been working on this since Amanda and I started here, and it's a really complex process. So we absolutely, with this position and all of the work that collaboratively we've been doing as an administrative team, principals, everyone really working together to look at our practice and shift practice and kind of get into this different mindset. So I would say everyone is working towards it. What that looks like in every district is different.
Other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Liz. It was great. It's great for me because I was in it for so long to hear all the good work that's being done. Such great progress. And I know it's not just you, but
nope, it's everybody.
It's good to have you in
and
the lead.
The support of the district and your support is huge, and it's really what's best for our kids. So
Right.
it's good work. But
I think
thank
the
you, and
board is impressed.
have a great night.
Thank you. All right, on to item 5.01, acceptance of minutes. The Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of the December 17th, 2024 meeting. May I have a first? Trustee Knutson, second. Trustee Jerome. We'll go with roll call voting. Trustee Knutson?
Aye.
Trustee Jerome?
Aye.
Trustee Mitchell-Morrell?
Aye.
Trustee Goodrich?
Aye.
Trustee Lynch?
Aye.
Trustee Raimondo?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you all. And we'll move on to the superintendent's district news.
Good evening. So I have a few pages. I'll try not to be too long. As we have discussed previously, the governor had signed legislation that dictated actions schools must take when temperatures reach certain thresholds in educational and support services spaces. But as a condition of signing that bill into law, the governor indicated that it needed to be amended, and in that vein, legislation to do so has already been introduced. So with the legislation that's been introduced, instead of prohibiting the occupation of educational and support services spaces if the temperature reaches 88 degrees as the original bill mandated, districts will be required to develop a policy that includes a plan to remove students and staff from these spaces where practicable, in quotes. So what that phrase, where practicable, means is subject to debate, but clearly provides districts with additional flexibility when implementing this law commencing in September of 2025. We are anticipating that this new bill will be passed by the legislature and signed by the governor in the near term. At our last board meeting, there was a question regarding the potential negative impact on our building aid if we lost federal aid. And I just wanted to revisit this question to ensure that everyone understands. First, that our building aid is not received from the federal government. Building aid is a state aid funding stream. But also, for informational purposes, we receive about $1.1 million in federal funding, and that is exclusive of the former CRISA and ARP funding. That was temporary funding. So the funding that we receive is basically for special education grants. The majority of it comes in 2 grants, Title I and Section 611. I don't know why my eyes are burning right now, sorry. Title I funds can be used to improve instructional materials, attendance, school climate, provide counseling, mentoring, and school-based mental health programs, to list some of the allowable uses. As a note, Title I funds cannot be used to support preschool-age children. Section 611 funds can be used to pay for special education teachers, administrators, related service providers, materials, professional development, and specialized equipment. So I just wanted to be clear. Our building aid is not at all affected by any federal changes, but the federal funding that we do get is about $1 million. So although not insignificant, with a budget of over $60 million, that's not going to necessarily make or break us. It's about time that we start looking at our school calendar for next year, so thank you. So we have begun looking at next year preliminarily. Generally, we base our calendar off of the Ulster BOCES calendar. They have not yet provided their draft calendar, but in our joint superintendent business officials meeting last week, we started to have basic discussions. As a side note, the reason that we do try and be in sync with the BOCES calendar when possible is so that our students who attend BOCES programs have as much opportunity to receive their instruction as possible. In our initial review, we do note that for next year, Labor Day falls really early. It's on September 1st, and the June Regents exams end on June 26th. So this appears to be a very long school year. But if we follow our traditional pattern with holidays, we would recognize both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in addition to the holidays that have been added recently, Lunar New Year and Juneteenth, which are now required non-school days. Interestingly, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are not required non-school days. That is our choice as a district, but Lunar New Year and Juneteenth are required non-school days. Once again, the winter break begins with Christmas Eve. Next year, that is on a Wednesday. New Year's Day is on a Thursday. So again, that would create a situation similar to this year where technically we would normally come back to school on January 2nd, but that would be a Friday. So it would be likely that attendance would be very minimal if we actually asked people to come back on Friday, January 2nd. So just at an initial look, it looks that we may need to reduce our snow day allocation to 6, but that's very preliminary. It has not been reviewed with instructional cabinet yet. That's on our agenda for next week, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there so people start to think about it. Just as a note, our technology director let us know that due to the power surges that we had last week, the internal controller on the sign out front has gone bad, so you may have noticed that that sign is not on. He is working to get it fixed, but for now, so that we avoid additional damage, he has turned it off. There was an RFI inquiry as to whether the full district-wide 4th and 5th grade would fit into Bennett along with the existing K-3 structure. So our team did some analysis and believes that this is not currently a viable option. This model would require, by our math, approximately 27 classrooms and then additional office space for additional mental health and related service providers who would need to provide services in order to support the additional student population that would be housed here. The current building currently has 24 classrooms. So creating this model would impact the assignment of the mental health and related service providers in a way that would split several individuals between the buildings, because there would be a smaller caseload in Woodstock that would not support them full-time necessarily, and then a larger caseload here in Bennett. So we would have additional staff members traveling, but they would also need additional space in order to serve the students that would be here in Bennett. This structure would also create a higher transportation cost, as it would recreate that formerly redundant bus run structure, in which we would have vehicles in the Woodstock area picking up students for Woodstock, and then additional vehicles on the same routes and roads picking up those Woodstock students to bring them to Bennett. So we would be covering the same routes with 2 vehicles. This would also create a situation in which the Woodstock students would be expected to integrate into a building with an existing culture that they would only be in for 2 years. This differs from the previous structure, in which students from both primary buildings came together at the same time to create new relationships and join a new building. And lastly, we wanted to just let everybody know that we are planning to once again hold our Summer Skills Academy at Bennett this summer. We did suspend it last year for multiple reasons, but the planning has begun for this summer 2025 session. This will be a K-5 program scheduled from July 7th through August 1st. As usual, it will be morning only, 8:30 to 11:30. But we will share more information as we progress through the planning process.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent? Great, thank you. 7.01, I'm sorry, yes, 7.01, any board district news? Okay, moving on to our student representative, Olivia McHugh will give us her report.
Good evening. So this week, the high school and middle school have started taking their midterm exams, and next week will be Regents Week, where the high school students will start taking Regents exams. Some accomplishments from the students include the completion of the mural, Welcome to the Nest, which you can find above the high school gym entrance. Additionally, the Science Olympia team traveled to compete in their first tournament of the year. Some upcoming events include Coaches Appreciation Days, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week, and On Tours Community Night, which will be this Friday, the 17th. And as the first year of the academic school year, first half of the academic school year comes to an end, the student government want to mention some completed initiatives. So the high school, they, in addition to completing the mural initiative, they also added clocks in the hallways and at outside lunch areas, because kids don't have their phones, so they now have access to the time. And the middle school student government completed initiatives including the Halloween dance with costume parties, as well as organizing Spirit Week. And that's all.
Great, thank you so much for that report. Any questions for Olivia? Okay, great. And Olivia, you can go whenever you want to. I know we're running a little long tonight, so we don't want to keep you out too late. Item 9.01 is acknowledgement of those folks who spoke at the last meeting, and Megan Brenner did speak. Item 10.01 is public be heard, our public and student comment. The board appreciates hearing from the public, including students, on any agenda or non-agenda item. Please understand that by our adopted parliamentary procedure, the board can't engage in discussion or answer questions during public be heard. Please know that we hear you and we take all of your comments into consideration. The board does reserve the right to correct any inaccuracies or misinformation during public be heard. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, be civil, and do not name any particular individuals or promote any commercial ventures or products. People wishing to express individual student or personnel concerns can bring them to the superintendent's attention in private. And tonight, Mark Willens has signed up to speak. Hello.
Hello. For those that don't know me, I'm a graduate here at Ontario High School a long time ago. I'm not going to say when. My daughter recently graduated. She's a sophomore at Vanderbilt University, and my son here is a junior. I'm also the varsity basketball coach and have coached mostly basketball, but a few other sports here for about 7 years. So I just wanted to quickly sort of like bring forward a discussion, maybe open a discussion about trying to help improve access to our facilities for our community and our kids, specifically on Sundays. And I know there's some barriers to that, and there's some hurdles that would have to be overcome to that I understand, things like security access and custodial support. But I do think it would be a huge benefit to our kids, and specifically, honestly, some of the younger groups, elementary age groups, kids who are maybe not always involved in school team sports and things like that. I know across the board, all of our sports are constantly fighting for space and access. Sports like winter track, who don't have access to pole vaulting space and shot putting space. And then in general, there's just a high demand for kids to have access. So I thought I just wanted to mention and bring to the table an idea of how can we work together to try to improve access to our facility on Sundays. My wife happens to work at Saugerty. She's a social worker there, and I do know there's been some success in other districts across the region in figuring out a way to do that. It's having somebody obviously open the building and having the right support there. I know, as a coach, I'm certainly willing to support students and athletes in that way myself. I had an athlete text me Saturday, "Coach, I'd really love to come shoot in the gym Sunday. Can I get there?" And I'd be like, "Hey, we really can't open it on Sunday. Otherwise, I'd be happy to do it." So I just wanted to really just bring that up and see if there's something we can do to improve that situation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Would anyone else like to speak? All right. Item 11.01 is discussion and possible action, and the discussion is around the creation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. I believe the superintendent shared with us the NISBA proposed policy and also the Highland School District's DEI policy. We briefly reviewed the DEI policies in policy committee the other day, and were impressed with the job that Highland had done, and just thought it would be good to have the board review those policies because they're quite different, and other local districts have mirrored their DEI policies more off of the NISBA model. And we could just open it up for discussion. Trustee Raimondo?
So when I was comparing them, I really love Highland's definition of what the board would expect to see in the annual equity report. I think those bullet points help guide the board to know what to expect. and then, for us to have questions if we have them. And I think the definitions are integral to understanding the motivation behind why this has to happen and why we need to adopt something. So I would agree to or encourage incorporating the bullet points of what to expect in the review and the definitions as well into the NISBA policy, added into the NISBA policy.
So your suggestion would be to blend the two. Okay. Okay. Any other comments about the policies? I would agree that the beginning of their policy really does set the tone for why the policy is being developed, and it also I'm sorry, not the beginning, the not the definitions, the subject and the description of what the board is looking for really sets the tone for the board, and I think also the administration in terms of, it sort of spells it all out. So there are no, there's always question marks, but no huge question marks. So is the board comfortable moving forward with the development of a DEI policy? Trustee Knutson?
Sorry, isn't that a board? Didn't we adopt that as a board goal?
Well, yeah, but it was something that we're working towards. So I just wanted to make sure that we're okay, that we're all okay with. So policy committee will start working on it and bring a draft back to the board. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Item 11.02 is senior exemption update.
So this is just a kind of a reminder that back in 2023, that the governor gave schools the ability to raise the senior exemption up to a maximum of $50,000. We were currently at, I believe, 29 at the time. So we had, in the discussion, I had recommended and the board had approved that we would do it over a 3-year period so as not to make a huge impact in year 1. So we are now in that 3rd year. So at the next board meeting will be the resolution in approving an increase to the cap of the maximum of $50,000 for the 25 and 26 school year. And then I also wanted to mention that at the next board meeting, we will also need to do a resolution for the SECRA, the State Quality Review, something having to do with the project. Normally we do it, we've historically always done type 2 action. I'm sure that sounds familiar to you, and that is because we're having very minimal effect to the building when we do a capital projects. Mostly it's interior renovation work. But because the work here at Bennett will require an addition, it's actually going to have to be a type 1 action, which actually our attorneys explained to us has a little bit more work involved, which is why we'll have to do it a little earlier. So that type 1 action will be on the next board agenda, and then there will be a second SECRA resolution as we get to the March vote.
I just wanted to clarify for anyone who is not familiar with the exemption that the $50,000 exemption means that the taxable assessed value of the property that the senior owns would be reduced by $50,000 before the tax rate was applied, correct? Okay.
And it's not for every senior citizen in our school district. You have to qualify.
You have to qualify. There is an income level, and then it kind of by percentages goes down based on your income.
Great, so community members who wish to apply should see their assessor.
Yes. Which is the reason we're doing it next week. They need to go to the assessor by March 1st.
Trustee Jerome?
Oh, just also, I contacted our local library and just made sure that she was also a point of contact on that tip. So, what are we voting on next meeting? We're voting on.
So
what are we doing to this school? Is that? Do we know yet? I don't know what I'm voting.
This is purely. This is just purely. It's. I don't know how to explain that.
This action would allow us to move forward with a capital project proposition that would change the footprint of the building if that is what we so choose to do. If we do this action and then for whatever reason nothing moves forward, that's fine.
Yeah,
but we
matter.
can't move forward without it.
Yes.
Is that helpful? Okay.
Trustee Lynch?
Yes, thank you. I was just, I think I saw this in your memo to the superintendent in our notes here, but we have not yet seen an impact from the decision we made 3 years ago. Is that correct? In terms of any financial impact to the district that would be outsized or somewhat
There
surprising?
wouldn't be an impact to the district. There would only be impact to the taxpayers. We have we have had no complaints.
Okay.
We've actually had quite a few people call us and thank us.
Yeah, great, wonderful. Thank you.
I just have a question. I recall that when we voted to do the $35,000 exemption, that was also, I don't know that the amount was also offered to firefighters and I can't remember who else, but do you recall, and are those folks still eligible to receive this if they apply?
They are, but it's a different exemption. It was, and we just put it in the whole thing right in. There was no staggering for them.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications? All right. We're scheduled for a break. Do we want to take a break? Nope. We'll keep going. Okay. Do you need a break? Okay. All right. Let's take 5 minutes. All right, moving on to item 1301, approval of the consent agenda. The board hereby approves items number 13.02 through 13.07. May I have a first? Trustee Goodrich, second. Trustee Jerome, any questions or comments? Okay, we'll vote. Trustee Knutson?
Aye.
Trustee Jerome?
Aye.
Trustee Mitchell-Morel?
Aye.
Trustee Goodrich?
Aye.
Trustee Lynch?
Aye.
Trustee Raimondo?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Trustee Bishop, I reviewed
Oh,
Schedule U
thank
and everything
you.
seems to be
Thank
in
you.
order.
Thanks for reminding me. That's great. On to, thank goodness, right? 14.01, approval of contracts and independent contract retainers. The Board of Ed hereby approves items number 14.02 through 14.14. May I have a first? Trustee Jerome, second. Trustee Raimondo, any questions or comments? All right. Trustee Lynch?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask about the 14.03 and the additional school resource officer. Just want to make sure I understand that cost going forward would have to be in the next budget because this money was provided by a grant that we discussed at the last meeting.
Yep.
So going forward, if this arrangement were to continue, we would need to add that to the budget in
Absolutely. In the 25-26
26
school year, yes.
Thank
and
you.
then looking forward, if we were to consolidate, then we would go back to one.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
So we'll vote. Trustee Knutson?
Aye.
Trustee Jerome?
Aye.
Trustee Mitchell-Morel?
Aye.
Trustee Goodrich?
Aye.
Trustee Lynch?
Aye.
Trustee Raimondo?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. So on to 15.01. We have a first reading of policy 5678, artificial intelligence, and 15.02, a first reading of policy 1322, ex officio student member of the Board of Education. Any questions or comments about that? I know we're not voting, it's just a first reading. Okay. On to committee reports. Are there any committees that wish to report on meetings that were held recently?
Yep.
Trustee Lynch?
Sure. The Communications Committee met again this month. We talked a bit about actually getting the finalized written report of the long-term plan that we'd all seen, and Trustee Bishop asked for that to be finalized and so that we could share that with all of you. We also talked a lot, of course, about content for our newsletters, and as the news, there's something called, as you know, the Board Corner, which is in the printed newsletter versus our Board Briefs, which is the online newsletter. We decided that we would, because not everybody is receiving the board briefs, you have to sign up for those to get your email address sorted. We do want to make sure we cover some of that content in the Board Corner, but we also don't want it to be a complete replication of the same information. So we'll take some of those headlines and then go deeper in the printed version on some of the more important issues, particularly the optimizing onto our work that we're contributing to. So I think if there's any comments about that, we'd be happy to talk through that with the broader group, but that felt like the strong consensus. And then last, we asked for a preview, if you will, a presentation of a new communication tool that has come to our attention as potentially quite valuable to the community. The app is called Parent Square. Some of you have already used it. but we recognize that it could be a shared service from the BOCES team, but it would still incur a cost. So as soon as we have that scheduled, we'll let everybody know what the options are. But essentially, it's an online tool that both parents, teachers, and administrators could use to better communicate in real time and have two-way communication about what's going on at the schools, including events and other things.
Thank you. Great. Any other committee reports? I will just mention that the Legislative Action Committee hasn't met, but we have received an advocacy update from the New York State School Board Association, just notifying us that the Lobby Day, Advocacy Day at the State Capitol is coming up. It's on, I believe it's on February 12th, and that's a Wednesday. And the Friday prior to that, they do a virtual kind of informative meeting on how that works for those of us who haven't done it. So if anyone's interested in Lobby Day, let us know. I am going to try to arrange to be able to be in Albany that Wednesday, and we will let BOCES know, we'll let Shyla know that whoever's going is going, and then BOCES arranges meetings for us to meet with our representatives, our senators and assembly persons. It's a great day. It's active day, but it's informative. And I think it means a lot to them that we appear and meet with them. It means a lot to us that they appear and meet with us. So, all right, on to old business. Is there any old business to discuss? Trustee Raimondo?
So I know after our retreat, we landed in the holidays, and we have our book that we were going to discuss, The Governance Core 2.0. So I just wanted to bring it back to just see what our timeline is for reading a chapter and talking about a chapter and how you want to lay it out potentially moving forward. I know we have a lot to do in the next, 4 months, but it's just something that I thought we should bring back.
Trustee Mitchell-Morrell?
I haven't really looked at it. Does it have chapters? Like, could we just do, like, one chapter and, like, highlight and take it super slow?
Sure. That works for me. Does that work for everybody? I mean, I think that's doable. So should we assign chapter 1? Okay. And it'll be in the minutes as a reminder, and then we can discuss it. We can have it for discussion at our next board meeting.
Just curious, do we need to discuss it publicly necessarily?
We don't have to discuss it publicly, but I mean, it's an opportunity. It's the only time that we're all together at the same, honestly, at the same time. So I think we can. I think it would be really a brief discussion. Yeah. Just, discuss the highlights, maybe some questions that we might have.
Maybe someone could remind us one more, like a week before or something. I know that's like next week, but still.
Sure. We'll send a reminder. Oh, there you go.
Do you want to do just one chapter a month, versus one a meeting? Because
I think one a meeting.
I think we can handle one a meeting.
Okay. That's what I figured. I just didn't want to overwhelm anyone.
Because one a month, some of us may not be on the board any longer by the time we get to the end of it. Okay. All right. Any other old business? Trustee Knutson?
Just because I don't think it's been mentioned at all in this meeting yet, but tomorrow night is the second big presentation on the development of the Capitol project. It should be of great interest to anybody who's following that project in the community, and I hope a lot of people come and participate.
Trustee Lynch?
I just wanted to thank and acknowledge and thank the superintendent for the dashboard that you included in our, I think it was in an update, correct? Yes. And just wanted to say how useful I thought it was, but also open up discussion on it for if there was needed any discussion on whether it works for everybody, if it's what we envisioned, and if having it in the update feels right. Does it? Because obviously superintendent gives us an update weekly, but we don't need the dashboard weekly, certainly. So maybe just talking about the cadence and that kind of thing. Is it, as you collected the data, was it onerous in any way, or did it feel like it was, as we had hoped, it was all stuff we already basically had and just pulled it all together?
Yeah, and the vast majority of it won't change. Let me rephrase that. Won't change more than annually.
Would it be something you would include in each update, or just, or is it something we should bring with us? I'm just thinking about how we would use it.
I think it's honestly, it's for us, it's for our information, just to keep us, I think, apprised of the data. I think if at any point any trustee feels like they would like more information, like different information or more in-depth information, it can just be requested through an RFI. What do you think?
That's fine. I mean, or I can even just append it to every update just as a reminder if you want, but I don't know how many times you want to see the same.
Would it be possible to just put it up like on the back of this sheet that we get each during the meeting? Because sometimes I use it as a reference point. I keep looking in my phone, but I'm just thinking.
Sure, I can share. It's a Google Doc, so I can share it with the district clerk, and I mean, there's nothing.
You could print it out.
That she can't see.
Great, thank you. Perfect. That would be great. If others agree, yeah. Okay. Thank
So
you.
it would be the first meeting of every month, because that reflects the end numbers of every month. Okay, good. Any other old business? Trustee Knudsen?
Just wondering if we can get an update, or maybe this is an RFI, I'm sorry, but an update at the next meeting on the progress of the migration from board docs to community. How's that going, and when we might be able to look at that?
So, happy news. We're currently in the migration phase. So they have taken over. So that'll take, we probably have 2 weeks left. So they anticipated the first week in February is when everything was going to be migrated over. And then we go ahead and play and we learn how to use it. Diligent community team will sit down with the administrative team as well as myself so we can learn how to use it. And then if any trustee would like to sit in on that meeting, then of course we would do that. Otherwise, they would be individually trainings with myself. And then our projection is to go live and use it fully by March 1st.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, Trustee Jerome.
Thank you for mentioning the visioning session tomorrow. Everybody should be coming to those, and hopefully there'll be a good turnout to talk about the future of the district. Also, I want to remind everybody that to get April 7th in their calendars, because Meet, Greet, and Eat is on the horizon, and already there's lots and lots being done, and there's going to be great things in the silent auction. It's going to be fabulous food, and it's going to be exponentially larger than it was last year, and so we should talk about that as much as we can so we get a great turnout.
Great, thank you. Any other new business? Trustee Lynch?
Yeah, thank you. I had an RFI over the last week about the use of our facilities and open gym space, and I just wanted to request in the administration to potentially put a plan together that we could respond to. I just wanted to clarify something, however, though, that in the language that I was using in terms of open gym, that can mean something very specific. And in the case, I think of Margaretville, thank you. Yeah, that's a specific term, meaning that it's open, obviously, to our community, versus potentially looking at a plan that would have both open gym, but also 24/7 access for coaches and staff, meaning that there could be an opportunity because some of our coaches have limited time that they can be with their teams or whatever because of the fob entrance, and just trying to better understand what some of those limitations are. So just wanted to clarify that the question was about using facilities. The gym space is obvious, but what could we do that would both help meet all of the goals that we talked about in that I mentioned in the RFI, which includes obviously already great opportunities to bring the district together, opportunity for exercise, obviously, and getting kids off screens and giving them a place to go that's safe, but then also thinking about the needs of our athletes as well, which is more specific to access to the gym, not just open gym. Does that make sense?
Yes, and there's some things that are not clear in terms of scheduling for things like practices, that when we schedule practices, we provide transportation. If there are needs, they need to go through the building administrators with requests. So it's not really for us to set up a plan for open gym. It's for the people who are wanting it to go through the process. So they need to do that, and then we also need to be mindful of the other staffing that's required. And even if we have custodial staff on site, they still have to be able to clean the spaces. So people can't be in them for the whole evening. But I would request that the people who have specific thoughts and ideas, if they are volunteering, then we need to know that, because we can't necessarily pay people for those roles, and then we have to figure out who the intended audience is. There's a lot of details there, but it should start at the building level.
Thank you very much for being receptive to it. I think, just so I understand, I'm not sure I understand what that means, because I know there's an added cost, and that's where we would come in terms of the board, in terms of thinking about potentially requesting a service that's an added cost. Correct?
Well, I think it depends on what that cost is for, and whether it's a gift of taxpayer dollars or whether it's for the school program.
Thank you. That's the difference. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Trustee Jerome?
I know there's so many details around this. It seems such a sort of a simple request, but I know it's not. But I wonder whether this is something, as we envision a new optimized Ontiora, I think that this is one of the things, aside from some of the other, we have our things that we've already paid for, and then we've got the things we've got to do, our laundry list of, updates. And then we've got these things that could be adding on to Bennett, or creating a separate lockable entrance for something that was safe, that followed requirements for public access. I know at the library they were going to have a door that could lock the rest of the library. I don't know what that looks like, but it's maybe something for the future of our campus, because we are really trying to pull people from the community, do great things for the surrounding community. Maybe it's something we talk about tomorrow, as it would be such a value to the middle school, high school. I think it's a valuable idea.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trustee Jerome. I agree with that, but I also think there's 3 more years before we realize that dream, and so I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of keeping a gym open for 3 hours on a Saturday morning when there's no games. This seems like a no-brainer and gives the community an opportunity to come together. However, there's a lot that goes into it. A ton of work hours, a ton of scheduling, a lot of oversight, security concerns. So I just don't want to pretend to think that it's not a big deal, and I'm just asking what is possible, and recognize that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to say that. No, I agree. Sooner the better. In 3 years, I just think it should be something that we think about as we optimize, even if it's not part of a larger capital plan. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Trustee Goodrich?
So at some point in time, I guess we have to have a discussion about capital improvement propositions and what they look like. I guess this is a question. What kind of time frame are we looking at when we need to have that discussion? And what does the superintendent need for that to happen? And
I think our hope is that in the community session tomorrow, we're going to kind of refine what the priorities are for the community. And then I would anticipate, I'm going to look at Assistant Superintendent LeClaire as well, but I would anticipate that we begin talking about them at the next meeting, because we are looking to refine them and decide what will be on the ballot at the second meeting in March.
I was just looking for the presentation that I did at the last meeting where we kind of had some dates in there. Of course, I can't find it now. Hold on. So many Google Docs. So little time. And then it just won't come up. Okay.
I have one more question. So the next newsletter is coming out when, and will it have any information from the community forums?
It hasn't gone to print yet. The newsletter? The board corner content will be, but the newsletter will be out in beginning of February, I believe.
So will it have any community forum information?
I'm sure it will.
Okay, good.
So I just looked at the dates. So February 4th, we are looking to do the initial design and the initial funding considerations at the board meeting. At the March 4th board meeting with the final design and the maximum not to exceed cost and tax impact, with the recommendation as to the number of propositions to be included. And then March 18th would be approving the propositions to be added to the ballot. So those will be our next 3 meetings.
So if we're looking at designs on February 4th, but we're not having a meeting till tomorrow, how is that even possible? I don't understand. I don't understand how the architects or whoever can...
They have been turning things around literally in 24 hours. They have been amazing. We have the most amazing architects. We really do.
Wow.
We really do. But then I also know, we have a February 18th board meeting that I, for some reason, don't have anything down here for. So we do have another board meeting in there.
So we'll get input tomorrow night, and people somehow tomorrow night will decide what is going to be done. And then I don't understand. I just don't understand the timeline.
That's all right. Tomorrow night we're getting more input. We're showing the community how we interpreted what we got from the last meeting and what that looks like. So we have another community forum after that as well. So we will take what we learned tomorrow night and bring it back to the board at the beginning of February. And in February, the board and the community will be working in tandem. There's going to have to be some interplay.
I guess tomorrow night we'll see how because so much was talked about at the last meeting that I was there, from campus redesign to 2 stories on, there was so much there. How are we teasing out what the priorities are? What's the process there? How are we deciding that?
We don't have the entire run of show yet. We'll be going over that with Sharon tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So tomorrow that will show a lot of that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other requests for information? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Raimondo, second. Trustee Knudsen, all in favor? Great. Our next meeting. Whoops. Our next meeting is February 4th at the middle school, high school. We'll see you all then.